created a structure where, for example, the freedom to fail is the #1 priority. It's safe to fail. Protecting your ass is not the #1 issue.
I really can't explain it. Like, it's just a total high being out there. You can't describe it.
Motoring 92 is brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.
This week we're in sunny California. Hello everybody and welcome to Motoring. You know, it's true that many of today's fads and trends began right here in California, whether we're talking about fashion, food, or even the automobile. And with that in mind, we're going to visit a Japanese auto manufacturer who is betting that many of its future models will get their inspiration from right here in Southern California. There are many forms of transportation in Southern California, both on land and water. But by far the most popular way to get around is the car. The crowded freeways are testimony that the California love affair with the automobile is as strong as ever. And so it was in the early 80s that the Nissan Motor Company became the first Japanese manufacturer to open a design center on the West Coast in San Diego.
Everything we do is based around what it is about a process, an environment, and a culture that enhances and stimulates idea making. So you're going to see a lot of stuff that looks, you'll get the feeling that we don't work very hard. I mean, there's playgrounds here, and we take our play very seriously. We don't know where it's leading or what's next.
The man in charge of the day-to-day activities is the Vice President, Gerald Hirschberg. On this day, he was hosting journalists from around North America.
A couple of suggestions like which way do you face in the shower? Toward the water or away? Do you sit in the middle, back, or front of the theaters? Important issues like that are what really make us tick.
Hirschberg joined General Motors in the early 60s and was GM's chief designer by the age of 28. In 1980, he joined Nissan.
It's certainly not something I set out to do, but I had one of those fairy tale once-in-a-lifetime calls where one snowy day in Detroit, I got a call from a headhunter who asked if I'd be interested in helping to found a world-class design studio for one of the world's leading automobile manufacturers anywhere in the country that I felt might be appropriate, along with a team of Japanese people, and to establish a methodology, hire a staff, and design cars ultimately for the real world. It didn't take real long to say yes, and it didn't take all that long really to find California as the likely spot for this.
But that was, I would think back then, almost unheard of.
That's
for
right.
Someone who worked for General Motors to move not only out here, but move and work for a Japanese auto manufacturer.
That's true.
It was more than money that brought you out here, obviously.
It was. I mean, there was a risk factor, there was the unknown, there was the fact that I was told on the day I was leaving by one of the executives of General Motors that I was the first executive designer in the history of General Motors ever to voluntarily leave, that is without dying, the corporation. So if you were going to be an automobile designer in America, GM was the place to be in those days. And the idea of going to work for this little country that might not succeed in automobiles seemed like a terribly risky venture to everybody from those in the know in the industry to my father-in-law, who was uncertain what I was going to do with his daughter and grandkids. So it felt risky, but it felt right from the outset. A design center is a little Renaissance place. When Nissan said to me, "We actually want to strive for the world's best," I mean, that really fired my imagination. I thought, well, how do you go about getting the world's best? The first priority is getting the world's best people. And that's certainly our very top priority, to attract the best. We created a structure where, for example, the freedom to fail is the #1 priority. It's safe to fail. Protecting your ass is not the #1 issue, which it is in most corporations, whether it's stated or unstated. In our place, we're a little concerned if somebody isn't hanging out there and taking a chance.
The newest creation out of the design center is the 1993 G30.
That's the theme of this car. It's as simple as that. The idea was, you've seen the great Japanese book, How to Package Five Eggs, or the use of the egg as the cocoon for the interior of the car. And we literally built a car around that idea. We called this the thema, the organizing principle behind the design. All great design in our minds, in NDI's mind, has a central thema. It's not necessary that the public, that register, that people say, hey, look, a car built around an egg and a sweet. People are not very patriotic here about the country from which the car they drive in is built. If they like it, it's bought. It's as simple as that. So for car designers, there's nothing smug. It's challenging. It's even threatening. The latest, hottest, best thing from whether it's Sweden or Yugoslavia or Japan or anywhere will show up on the streets of California, and if it's good, and sometimes even if it's not, somebody will go for it. That's very stimulating, and it's very different from the environment I came from in Detroit, where really, at one point, if you drove a Japanese car, you'd be stoned. The competition was fine as long as it wasn't really winning or threatening. In California, that's all thrown out. So when I wake up in the morning, the papers aren't slanted towards what's good for Detroit or what's good for the unions or what's good for Ford, GM, or Chrysler. It's just a question of what's interesting today.
Test Drive with Graham Fletcher.
This week on Test Drive, we look at another totally new vehicle. This is the 1992 Hyundai Elantra. Now, this vehicle is going to do battle in probably the toughest segment in the marketplace today, the compact four-door sedan. To win, it's got to have credentials.
The new Elantra features fully independent suspension, utilizing McPherson struts up front and a multi-link trailing arm setup in back. During the pylon test, the car tracked a clean, precise line. A front stabilizer bar helped control some of the body roll, but as with the majority of cars in this class, it became very evident when the car was nearing the limit. A decent set of low-profile Michelin tires provided ample grip and resisted the urge to plow when pushed. On the road, the whole setup offers a congenial ride, managing to isolate the occupants from large bumps. Smaller bumps like expansion joints and the like produced a fair amount of noise, though, in the form of a double thump-thump. The Elantra uses a power-assisted front disc rear drum brake system. During the brake test, they perform without a hitch, stopping distance averaging around 123 feet from 80k. Repeated high-speed stops induced virtually no fade, and they always had a strong and controlled feel.
You're looking at Hyundai's first foray into double overhead cam 16-valve engine technology. Now, this engine was designed originally by Mitsubishi, but is being built by Hyundai themselves. This marks the first time they've offered this level of technology in any of their vehicles.
The engine, as I indicated, represents a significant step forward for Hyundai. Output is rated at 113 horses and 102 pounds-feet of torque. The horsepower figure is best in class, beating the Nissan Maxima by 3. On the skid pad, this equated to brisk 0 to 100 times of around 9.5 seconds. Typical of most small displacement multi-valve engines, you're forced into the upper reaches of the rev range to access the power. Accordingly, it is here that the engine is at its noisiest. Having said that, I never considered the amount of noise overly intrusive, because Hyundai have done a bang-up job with isolating the engine noise from the occupants. The same, however, cannot be said of the 5-speed manual transmission. The clutch had a very dead feel despite being hydraulic, and the shifter had a vague notchy feel. Some refinements here would enhance driving pleasure immensely. Inside, the Elantra is loaded with extras you normally only expect in far more expensive cars. Adjustable upper seatbelt anchors and an abundance of head and leg room both up front and in the rear. The trunk is spacious and features an opening that is cut to bumper level. A split folding rear seat back ensures versatility. The driving controls are fairly well placed, although some of you may find the radio and climate controls close to the end of your reach. The analog instrumentation is complete and legible in every respect.
My pet peeve on the Elantra may be a small one, but it does serve to illustrate very effectively the importance of having a correctly fitting floor mat. Every time you depress the clutch on this vehicle, it would pick the floor mat up and it gets stuck around the pedals. If you adjust the mat to stop that from happening, now you can't depress the clutch fully, which means around town you go crashing back and forth through the gearbox. Anyway, now to the scoreboard for a rundown on the 1992 Hyundai Elantra.
While being far from outstanding in the pylon test, the Elantra proved to be capable and competent as well as comfortable, much of which can be attributed to the excellent Michelin rubber. Ample horsepower and a reasonable torque figure give the new Elantra a refreshingly peppy feel. We required just over 9.5 seconds to accelerate to 100 kilometers an hour. Typical of most multi-valve engines, however, low-end torque was at a premium. While lacking an anti-lock feature, the power brakes turned in respectable stopping distances of around 123 feet from 80k. The stops were strong and controlled, and given the brake pedal's good modulation, the threshold was very easy to find. A very well-appointed interior and acceptable noise levels provided better than average comfort. If you use the engine's power, however, you'll find the noise level begins to verge on excessive. During the test, we averaged 8.6 litres per 100 kilometers or 33 miles per gallon. Again, if you use the engine's power, you will realize an appreciable drop in fuel economy. The Elantra is a landmark car for Hyundai. For the first time, they are offering contemporary technology. Twin this with a car that offers very good dollar value, and you have a car that deserves to be on any shopping list.
Well, while we've been in Southern California watching people roller skate, among other things, we've been driving the brand new 1992 Nissan Maxima. Now, this is the SE model. Not much change in the styling. All the change is under the hood. It now comes with a 24-valve, 190 horsepower, 6-cylinder engine. An engine very similar to the 300ZX. All right, it's now time to head to the shop and join our favorite mechanic, Bill Gardner.
You know, if you've looked through the owner's manual included with your car, I'm sure you've noticed that there's all kinds of scheduled maintenance and adjustments required. But far and away the most important part of servicing your car, whether it's under warranty or not, is checking and changing of the engine oil and the oil filters. Now, we've got three of the more popular grades of engine oil laid out here today. We've got 10W40, which is a common grade to use in the summertime during hot weather. We've got 10W30, a number that's of course become synonymous with motor oils for many cars. We also have 5W30, a little bit thinner grade of oil that's prescribed as a year-round lubricant for many of today's cars. Now, you want to consult your owner's manual just to determine exactly which grade of lubricant should be used and when. Some cars require seasonal changes from a thin oil in the wintertime to a little bit thicker oil in the summertime. So there again, check your owner's manual. That's the place to look. Now, engine oil does a lot of things in the engine other than just lubricating. It cleans and cools as well, and it helps dissolve and remove contaminants. It holds them in suspension in the engine oil so that at those change intervals they will be purged from the engine when we change the oil. Now, you can see that if we don't change the oil often enough, those contaminants will start to coat the parts inside the engine. Now, we've got a slight accumulation of sludge in the valve cover of this engine. Now, that amount is would almost be considered normal. That's nothing to get too excited about. This engine's about 7 or 8 years old, so that would be considered normal. But we've had to go into this engine for other reasons, and this is what you want to try and avoid by changing and checking that oil. Regular change intervals will help prevent us from having to do any major teardowns of the engine. Now, it's important that you change that oil at the correct intervals, and there's really no excuse for neglecting those change intervals. There's so many fast lube drive-through shops now that do the job quickly and inexpensively. There's no excuse for not doing it. If you're changing your own oil at home, make sure that you trap all the waste oil and put it in a container and take it for recycling. Most town dump sites accept waste oil for recycling, and it can all be recycled, as well as transmission fluids and other engine lubricants. Now, even the container itself, if you have a look on the bottom, has a recycle logo, so don't toss it in the garbage either. It's recyclable, just like every other plastic container that many of today's automotive products come in. Till next week, I'm Bill Gardner for Motoring 92.
A lot of women probably think I'm crazy to be out there, but you're safer in there than you are out on the highway.
If you have any comments or stories you'd like to share with us, drop us a line at Motoring 92, Post Office Box 284, Station J, Toronto, Ontario, M4J 4Y1.
We're now going to leave the boardwalk in Southern California and join Steve Grant at the racetrack. Now, he went there recently for a couple of reasons. One, to catch some exciting racing action, and he also told me he wanted to go there to meet some girls. Here's Steve.
Varney Speedway is one of hundreds of short tracks you see dotted all over the map. In fact, you probably have a hard time finding this Northern Ontario track unless you were looking for it really hard. But Varney has something that distinguishes itself from all the others: the women on wheels. Founded 4 years ago, this series is designed for the female racer in the family.
I've liked it since I was about 14 years old. I've been around Pinecrest and always wanted to drive, and it's taken me this long to build enough guts to go on the track.
Building up guts, last week was your first time on the track. What did you think?
I was scared stiff, literally.
Oh, I don't know. It's just you go out there and it's fun and you bang into people on the highway. You can't run into them. You get charged, and out there it's fun.
Oh, I just love it. Like, you're just racing, and then you're flying down the track and into those corners, and then I've done endurance racing the first time this year, and I really love that. There was 41 cars out there, and with the street stalkers, and I just loved it. I drive city bus through the week, and a lot of passengers too. They come up like, you do this for a hobby?
I suppose my job mostly is paying for everything, but well, I don't know. I just help out with what I can. I'm not too mechanically inclined, but I do what I can. And if they need a wrench or wheel changed or something, I get them a hand or do it myself, whatever. But I don't know. It's a lot of fun to watch, and I wish I was out there at times.
If Richard Petty is the king, then Ann Tolton is the queen. Not only has Ann raced since day one, she's one of two grandmothers on the circuit.
I've been racing, this is my 4th summer to race. The first year was more learning the experience, and then the second 2 years I was top in the points for the whole year, and the second year I also won the end of season.
Because the series is growing every week, Ann is quite often called upon to coach the rookies.
One of the big things is when another car is coming up on them, they have a tendency to look back, and we keep telling them don't turn back and look, because sure enough they're going to hit the wall or something if they do.
You know, women racing cars is not exactly a new idea. The thing is, they used to call it powder puff racing. Back then the women would jump into their husbands' cars when they were finished racing. The problem was, some were racing V8s, others 6-cylinders. In this series, everybody's racing with slant 6 engines, so basically the machinery is the same, and now becomes a driver's series.
They're about as fierce as you'll ever get in racing. They're strapped to a 6-cylinder car. They're as competitive as the guys, and when you see them out on the racetrack, you'll find that they just run as hard as they can, as fast as they can. There may be a 6 under the hood, but it doesn't matter, size or whatever. These ladies are out to race, and that's exactly what they're out doing.
We each go out there to win. Like if we have a mechanical failure, like a brake's going, we hit somebody, we're right over there to apologize. Like we don't mean to hit them or anything. And sometimes tempers can go because someone's winning and you lose control and take them out. Well, they're going to be upset. But by the end of the night, it's all blown over. It's just a momentary, I could have had it.
Don't even take me right now.
You guys weren't kidding when you said this was competitive, were you? What happened out there?
Well, she bumped me and I went flying. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm a little mad.
You're going to get it back in the final, though, aren't you?
Yeah, I'll try.
Colleen Verheul managed to hang on to win the feature under quickly fading lights. In this day and age of sponsorship pressure and big money, you'd be hard-pressed to find a more genuinely excited winner.
I guess it's like, I don't know, when I'm out front, I'm scared because I'm like, don't mess up, don't do anything wrong, you know, kind of thing. But it's always like waiting for the white flag, you know, when's the white flag coming out? Is this it? Is this it? And then finally it comes out and you're relieved.
So Helen, unlike the men now, your race is over, but you guys go back to work now. What are you getting all dressed up for now?
Oh, well, we sell 50-50 draw tickets. It's something we started last year when we raised money for the track. Mainly, we put new washrooms in for down in the pit. We've got those built. This year, our money's going for other track improvements.
So after the men race, they go and have a cold one. After you guys race, you go and do more work.
Something like that, yeah.
Kenzie's Corner with Jim Kenzie.
You can tell this is the boss's car, all this luxury and this beautiful leather upholstery. You know, leather is one of the true litmus tests of a luxury car. It's almost synonymous with high-class motoring. But you know, to me, leather is a pain in the, dare I say it, butt. It's way too hot in the summertime and it's really cold in the wintertime. The boss's wife will tell you that. It's also very expensive to buy and it's very difficult to maintain. If you've ever tried to repair a rip in leather upholstery with crazy glue, believe me, it doesn't work like they do it on television. Leather is also very slippery, and if you're driving a car with good cornering performance, you slide all over the place, and that can be very dangerous. Besides, leather makes really rude noises. Now for me, I prefer cloth upholstery. It's nice and cool in the summertime, it's warmer in the winter, it's nice and grippy in those high-speed corners. Now, if only they could find a way to make cloth smell like leather. I'm Jim Kenzie.
Now I know this program is all about cars, but there is more than one way to motor, and here's another way. This is the A-12 Blackbird. It is on display here at the San Diego Aerospace Museum. Now this is a spy plane. It first flew in 1962 and today is still the fastest aircraft in the skies. It can fly in excess of Mach 3 at over 85,000 feet. In fact, it can fly from one coast of the United States to the other in just 1 hour. Well, that is it for this week, but we'll see you next week for more stories about planes, cars, and the people who drive them.
Motoring 92 has been brought to you by Quaker State. Quaker State, one tough motor oil.